For the sake of live capture, it is July 29th at 8:03 p.m. and I have just returned from climbing Mount Fuji. I smell like a goat, my hair is a mess, I'm tired, and I'm trying to mentally process all that happened in about 36 hours. So, later in a video, I will elaborate on that. My dear friends, that footage was taken literally 3 months ago, and I feel now that after 3 months, I have finally gotten over my Mount Fuji trauma, and I can tell you about Mount Fuji. For reference sake, you are looking at the background of my lovely apartment in UCLA, and things are going along here and just doing the college scene in California now. Anyway, I digress. So, Mount Fuji. Let's begin with background. So, before I had considered climbing Mount Fuji, or rather, before I'd really committed to it, I had had several friends before me climb the mountain. And it was a big group of friends who are from the Cal State schools, and they went literally about 2 weeks before I ended up going. And everybody had mixed opinions. It really just depends on how fit of a person you are, because I had friends who are fairly active, like either they exercise or they do sports on a regular basis, and then I had friends who weren't so active, and naturally the friends who were active said, Fuji was it was okay. I did it. It was okay. And then, the friends that didn't exercise were just like, oh my gosh, never again. It was the worst experience ever. I'm still stiff, walking like a 90-year-old 3 days after the mountain. Awful experience. Moreover, what I'd garnered from the Cal State people is that climbing it during the night is just not fun times, because the tradition is that you start climbing the normal entry point at 9 p.m., climb it through the night, and then see sunrise from the top at 4 a.m. I didn't want to do that. So, I wasn't going to do that. So, through hearing the account of the Cal State students, I decided a couple things. One, I wouldn't climb it during the night. Two, I would book a reservation at a mountain hut on Fuji. From a certain point, Mount Fuji has what I would call a bare bones hotel. When I say mountain hut, that's just the term that's used. It doesn't literally mean a teepee. It means bare bones hotel. It means like a wooden bunker with this tiny, tiny dining hall and then very compact sleeping space and bathrooms. So that's what me, Elora, and Joseph ended up doing. So now it's time for character development. So I went with two friends, both who are from University of Oregon, and Elora is someone I'd met, I think my first year at University of Oregon. I'd known her ever since then, and she was going to Japan's Women's University, which is still in Tokyo, but not my same program. And then Joseph was a guy who came to Waseda for the spring semester, heard that Elora and I were going to do Mount Fuji, and decided to get on board with it. So we made plans, we made preparations, and part 2 of the story begins 24 hours before takeoff. So I so clearly remember this. I was out to dinner with friends the night before, and I got a call from Elora, and she said, "Hi, have you seen the weather for Fuji yet?" "No, why?" She says, "I think you should check it." And of course, check the weather report, and the 2 days roughly that we're supposed to be climbing Fuji, the weather says 80% chance of thunderstorm. And don't get me wrong, I'm determined. I'm a pretty determined person, but I'm not freaking crazy. So, if thunder was going to persist while we were supposed to climb Fuji, no go at all. And so, I basically called her back and said, okay, we'll check next morning, and if it's bad weather report the next morning, then we're just not going to go. So we almost didn't end up going. But of course, got up the next morning. Weather report basically said, yeah, sunny, a little cloudy, a little rainy, but nothing serious. So we decided to go. Now keep in mind, even though it's July, for Fuji you're supposed to have winter gear. They specifically tell you that one of the most common causes of death or having to turn back is hypothermia. Because even though it's sizzling like Satan in a sauna, to quote a certain person, in Tokyo, it's flippin' cold on Mount Fuji. So, yeah, it was really weird meeting at the train station in Tokyo with the friends and having it be, I don't know, 90 degrees, 95% humidity, just sweltering, and then getting up to Fuji, and immediately it was probably like maybe 60 degrees and a little less humid, but cold and wet. So, that's the other thing. When we met at the train station to start our journey, of course, in typical girl style, both Laura and I brought pretty big backpacks. Like, to give you a poundage sort of size ratio, my backpack was probably about 15 to 20 pounds, and then Laura's was 30 maybe. And I mean, I guess as a girl, I'm plagued by the what if syndrome, you know? It's the sort of thing where it's like, what if I need food? What if I need clothing? What if I need toilet paper? What if I need my toothbrush? What if I need my Yeti harpoon? What if there's a Yeti on the mountain and I need my Yeti harpoon? Better pack it. So anyway, we're at the train station, and Laura and I are with our pretty big backpacks, and then Joseph shows up. And Joseph literally shows up in a backpack that's like made for a kindergartner. I mean, it was probably about like yay wide, maybe about that thick, and like that tall. Like, not a big backpack. And so Laura and I quizzically look at one another and then turn to him and essentially say, so Joseph, where's the rest of your shit? And he says, oh, I mean, this is it. I mean, I'm wearing my layers right now for Fuji, so this is it. And and both Laura and I were just like, what? Okay. So then, we finally get on the bus. The bus to Fuji takes about 2.5 hours, and then we get off the bus. And then I had rented hiking boots for this trip. And so, we went to like a main lodge and we asked like, where is this hiking boot place? And they said, what are you talking about? There's no place here. It's like, it's down in the city. It's down at like the real base of Mount Fuji. We're like, what? Because on the site that I had booked this through, it really did say that, they're right on the mountain. They're at, the starting station, and, it's like, they're supposed to be there. So finally, we asked around, and we did find that this company does take a truck of hiking boots and, like, drives them up to the place. And so then, we found the truck. And I said, hi, I'm here to pick up my hiking boots. And they look at me, and they're like, really? Really? What's your name? And I told them my name. And they're looking at the roster and they're like, gosh, I don't see you on here. And at this point I'm getting nervous because of all the research that I did both with Cal State friends and then on the internet, it says you really should do this in hiking boots. Like, this is not going to go super well for you if you do it in just tennis shoes even. So I was flipping out because when I had originally called in to make my reservation, it was a whole big mishmash, and I don't think the lady fully understood what I wanted in terms of the reservation. And so it was just sort of, my heart almost stopped because I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to climb this in regular tennis shoes, like, F my life. But as it would so happen, the Japanese guys with the hiking shoes, they took pity on us and they let us take a pair, and I was like, yes. Oh, there's hope. Hope indeed. So then we eat lunch and we start hiking. And I have to say, the path starting is really misleading because, first of all, it's really, really wide. It's probably about like 6 or 7 people wide and flat, and it even goes a little downhill before it goes uphill. But the most unsettling thing is that we're seeing people come back from presumably climbing to the top, and I'm not gonna lie, they look like they got raped up the butt. Seriously, I mean, the facial expression was just like that, and like they were walking bow-legged, and just it looked like every part of their body, especially their legs and their butt, hurt. And I said, well, that's fairly unsettling. So start walking, and then poor Laura is like really affected by the elevation and having a tough time with it, and you know, it's just, we're taking breaks and we're doing whatnot, but like things are going, slower. And then finally we get to quote unquote level 7. So what I should explain at this point is that Mount Fuji is marked in levels. So the very, very bottom, the true bottom of Fuji is Station 1. And then I don't really know if there is an equally incremental measurement of each station, but I will show you the map. So I drew a pretty simple map here. Hold on, I'll draw it way down just to demonstrate. Okay, so here we have the map. So the right is the way up and the left is the way down. So I'm just going to be frank in saying that this map is a frickin' liar, because as you can see, it just says, it just goes by increments of 1 in the level, and it's just not true, Once you get past level 7, even though on the map it only says there's one level 8, level 8 takes forever, and there's literally like 5 level 8s. Seriously. And you're going to say, what do you mean? And I mean that first you get to level 7. Actually, no, you don't get to level 7. You get to level 7 First Aid Center. Then you get to level 7. Then there's level 7 for a while. Then there's level 8 First Aid Center. Then there's level 8 New Location. Then there's level 8 Old Location. Then there's level 8.5. And finally you get to level 9. And I didn't draw it super well, but okay, in level 8, there is a part that goes incredibly vertically. I'll circle it to show you what I mean. I mean, when you look at it on the map, it's a part that literally goes like here. So the place where I circled is the place it gets really vertical. So I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so we're hiking and we finally get to level 7. And let me just tell you, level 7 is where the mountain shows up. Because level 5 is just really gradual hills, and then level 6 starts to be steeper switchbacks, but they're still long and they're still fairly wide. And then you get to level 7 where the mountain huts start. And like the switchbacks are, it's not even a path really, it's just a bunch of like rocky mountain cliff face, and you gotta like hoof it like you're doing knee highs the whole way up the mountain. And so we were doing that, and then we get to our hut at like 6 p.m. and then we have dinner and we go to bed really early, and then we get up at 4 the next morning to see the sunrise, and it was pretty amazing. Like even at level 7, which I guess for elevation reference is about maybe like 7,000, maybe 8,000 feet above sea level. And I mean, even at that point, you feel like you're above the clouds. And it's really beautiful. Like, I actually haven't uploaded those pictures yet from my camera, but they're pretty spectacular. So then we watched the sunrise, and then at 5 a.m. we started climbing again. Another note, the first day we were climbing, the weather was perfect. It was sunny with a little bit of clouds and like 55 degrees. Then, the second day, unfortunately, the day we're doing the majority of our climbing, it was just shitty weather. It was just shitty. It was a little windy, a little rainy, and cold. And so as we're climbing, we eventually get to that spot that I circled on the map that looks vertical. And we saw that on the map originally, and we all said to ourselves, what the hell is that? And so eventually we get to that point. And it is literally like, it's not even jaggedy rock path. It's devolved into this really slippery, smooth stone. That this was the only part of the mountain where I had literally had to get on my hands and knees and crawl and clamber across it. So that was not good. And because it was windy, it was just windy enough to knock you off balance. I mean, there was a couple times where I was in mid-step, mid-step, like foot in the air, and then the wind comes and it's enough to make you go like, whoa, and then put your foot down. So after that happened about twice, I got used to the pattern of if I was in mid-step, take the step back, wait for the wind to stop, and then keep plodding along. Okay. So then we're climbing up the mountain, and then of course at like level 8.5, the weather turns for the worst. Now it starts raining, and it's really shitty. Climbing Fuji in what is essentially, I would say 40-degree weather, maybe even 35, and it's foggy, and it's cold, and now it's raining. So climbing, and by this point we're so tired because, I mean, it took us like, I don't know, 6 hours to get to the top from where we spent the night. And so finally you get to level 9. And level 9 is really sad because it's incredibly desolate. Usually at each number level there are huts, mountain huts. You can get like a cup of coffee or go to the bathroom or you know, do whatever. But level 9 is just like a sad little gate that just marks level 9, and I believe that the final level, even though it's only 400 meters, the air is extremely thin, and you're just so tired by that point. Everybody was going incredibly slow. Like to the pace of my hands right now. Like dunk, step, step, breathe, step, 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 breathe, that sort of thing. And so it took forever, and Joseph actually got there first, and then I got there second, and we were waiting for Laura. And as we were waiting, we were getting a little worried, and then all of a sudden Joseph is rummaging through his bags, and he says, "Uh-oh," and I said, "What? What's the matter?" And he said, "Well, you know, Laura's bag was getting kind of heavy, so I offered to take some of her stuff for her, and I have her air can." I was like, "What?" As reference, internet does recommend that you take the air can with you, like literally cans of air, like Spaceballs cans of air, to Fuji, because the air does get pretty thin past level 8. You don't need them. You can do the mountain without it. It just depends on your fitness level. But, you know, we were worried because poor Laura was, you know, it was amazing she was climbing the mountain, but she was just having some problems, and we were worried that, like, that something had happened to her, actually. And so literally, we were about to go down the mountain, and Laura, like, comes up, and we're like, oh, thank heavens. Woof. Lordy be. About to go down the mountain. And so then, we rest, and at this point, I'm actually really worried because for me, the very next day after I got done with Fuji, I had to move out of my dormitories at Waseda. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like looking at the clock. And the thing is like buses at Fuji stop at, I want to say 5 p.m. And after 5, like you are stuck on the mountain. There's nowhere else to go. And so I looked at my watch and I was like, you guys, like, I'm sorry, but I gotta go. Like, I can't miss the 5 o'clock bus. And they understood. They're like, okay, you go and like maybe we'll catch up. So anyway, going downhill. The path is different from going up, and may I just say it's way easier because it's basically this really thick, cushy volcanic ash on a gradual slope. I mean, literally just hoofing down on the downward hill, down Fuji. And I mean, of course, the whole time I'm thinking to myself, why the hell couldn't I have taken this way up the mountain, And amazingly, though, that Laura and Joseph caught up with me about halfway down the mountain. And poor Joseph, he was such a good sport. I think both Laura and I had our separate meltdown moments. I mean, Laura had a tough time going up the mountain, and then it was my turn to be fussy going down the mountain. And my fussy moment was naturally because I didn't use gaiters, even though I should have, when I walked down the mountain, because the sand and stuff just gets in your shoes. And so eventually I had been going down the mountain long enough where I just needed to take off my shoes. And by the way, this whole time it's still raining. It's still raining. It's been it had rained for like the last hour and a half going up to Fuji, and then on the mountain, and then or at the summit, and then going down. Still raining the whole time. So, at this point, I take off my shoes, and I said to Joseph and Laura, okay, you guys, we just need to stop for 2 minutes. I gotta take this crap out of my shoes. So, in the process of trying to take all the stuff out, I managed to get one shoe back on. But the other shoe is so soaked with water, I can't get it back on. It just, like, nothing is working. It just won't go on. And that's when I had my fit, where I was just like, screw this mountain. I am so done with it. I'm so done. And, Joseph was good-humored about the whole thing, so that was good. Any case, so finally we made it back to level 5, and by that point we had fully comprehended why people looked the way they did when we first saw them just a day before. And seeing that little mountain town that marks the entrance to climbing Fuji, when we came back to it and really like saw it again, I don't think I'd ever been so happy in my life to see civilization. It was a happy moment. And then, we didn't have much time. We literally had about maybe an hour before the last bus left. So, literally in the span of an hour, we had to return our hiking boots, we try and get food. I was freezing because all of my clothes from Fuji were just completely soaked through. And then, I bought like a sweater out of desperation, and then we went back to Tokyo. And may I just say, after Fuji, I feel like physically it took almost like 3 weeks to recover. The first 3 days, my walking was really incredibly stiff. Like, I looked like the 90-year-old, but promptly after finishing my program in Japan, I went to Hawaii for a week. And let me tell you something, I was the biggest vegetable anybody ever knew ever. Seriously, I mean, people ask, like, what did I do in Hawaii? This is what I did. I slept for 12 hours. I woke up. Oh, the sun's out. I should go outside. And so I rolled out of bed, rolled to the balcony that was in the hotel unit, had my book, maybe read for like an hour, and then was basically like, oh, I'm sort of tired again. I think I'm gonna take a nap. And that's how tired the whole thing of Fuji, like getting all my stuff back to the United States and like finishing my study abroad. That's how tired it made me. And that is my Fuji experience. I am a Fuji trauma survivor, and I am happy and glad that I shared it finally.